Hey, look, you made it. Thanks. And make sure you give yourself a like on this video and leave a comment underneath whenever I say something that you might agree or disagree with. Now let's go to the video.
I think if I were to pick it top of my mind, I've seen this toxic culture, and I've even been part of those kinds of cultures where the boss or the employer is some sort of a god.
Talk.
Right? And everybody else looks inferior to those guys. Right? So the principle for me is always, if you're an employer, in the true sense of that word, you actually bring in smarter people than yourself. Right?
How y'all doing? Look at you. You made it right here on this edition of the Simon Says podcast right here at Twiver Studios. They are located right here at Harlingen. You know what these guys do? They make sure that you as a business person, you have a place where you can come and create content. And guess what? You're able to interact with influencers that they have on their catalog, and they're able to merge together. And guess what you guys do? Make blissful content that can actually attract clients to your business. And you as an influencer, you can come here right here on this chair and put your butt cheeks on this chair and actually make great content like I'm doing right now. And someone who came on by the Twiver Studios is a person that I was way back in high school with. He's now a CEO, while I'm just now a content creator. Guy. Anyway, how you doing, Alex? Thanks so much for coming by, my man.
Thank you.
I really appreciate the fact that but what do you refer to yourself? Do you refer to yourself as a team leader or a CEO of Fundis?
Well, I think titles are way overrated. So I see more myself as a team leader because in real sense, for most of these early stage ventures that we run, if you hear somebody using a big title like CEO, it means they are the guys who do the cleaning, they are the guys who usher guests in. So I see myself more as a team leader rather than big titles that don't mean anything.
That's actually true, because there's a lot of people, especially within the working scene, who actually want the titles, but now the key thing is what's the content of that title.
Yes.
Team leader, that's very interesting. What do you define a good team leader is? What do you now I just want to know from your perspective. What's a good team leader?
The example for me is, so think for every single person who has the opportunity to lead a team. So think of yourself as if on one hand you have a sickle, on the other one you have a watering can, right? So the work of a team leader is making everybody's else work easier. So it's removing the obstacles, and where people need support, you are the one who does the watering as well.
That's true. Where you see you bosses out there who sometimes go out there, you want to harass people. A team leader, someone who makes someone else's work a whole bunch easier. Now, the reason why I got you here is I want to discuss this. You are primarily, you also, being a team leader, you are also an employer.
Yes.
Right? And there's some headaches that you go through
as
an employer. Even the first one, I just want to state, even someone maybe even watching, like even maybe looking for a job, so on and so forth. The first thing, even the headache you want to go through is, who do I bring on board to my system that I've actually made?
Yep.
So the question I want to ask you is, when you started Fundis, your co-founding there, who were you thinking as an important person to actually get on board first?
And I'll be very honest with you so that I don't try to look smart.
Okay.
This has been an exercise in trying to figure out stuff because so I trained as a lawyer. I knew my career was figured out in legal practice. Then 6 months into it, I started figuring, I just don't see myself doing this thing, right? But there was this burning need for as long as I could remember, always around building stuff. So for as long as I can remember, when guys were being asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? For me, I always knew I see things for what they could be if they were brought together. So this actually became an idea because I was having a couple of meetups with friends. I kept hearing them talking about how hard the time they were having recruiting artisans for their construction projects. Then I was like, hey, why don't we just figure out a system to make this easier?
You saw a need?
I saw a need.
And you wanted to fix it.
And I could see these guys actually have the competencies to do it. They just didn't know how to do it, right? So they just needed somebody to come and put it together. So at the very early stage for me, I could tell what this could be in the long run, right? And that was the only problem because these guys were not seeing the long run. They were seeing the short term.
Vision.
Right?
Vision.
So, yeah. So for me, these guys were trying to build a construction company. For me, I was trying to see how could we scale this thing up. So at the very early stages, I remember the guys I reached out to were guys I went to school with, right? At uni. And
People you trust.
not even just trusting, but people we were hanging out with, right?
Yes, sir.
But I know this person is really good at maybe articulating stuff. This guy is really good at thinking things through, right? So it coincidentally just happens that the first person I picked to do this with, so I remember when we were doing our last project at uni, right? So I did the larger part of her project. But then the day we were defending projects, right? She was amongst the people who went through, and mine didn't go through, and yet I did her project, right?
Wow.
So I remember watching her doing that presentation, defending her project, and I was like, someday I would want to work with her. So the day I got this idea, she was the first person I reached out to and said, hey, I have this idea, can we do it together? And it's now 10 years. We have done lots of stuff together since then. So I think that very early stage, first of all, think of an idea as if it's a destination, right? Once you have that picture in mind, that's the destination that we are going. Destinations could change midway.
So you have to be dynamic.
So you have to be very dynamic. So you have to just think through, do I have the right vehicle? Do I have the right people in that vehicle? And then your work is figuring out, is everybody seated in the right seat? Right?
Now, a quick thing, even when it comes to even like, because even you just mentioned like, do you have the right vehicle, do you have the right people within that vehicle? Now the people within that vehicle, how then have you been able to now pick the various people? Like for example, the first person you did was partnership, right? Now, you've employed several people who are currently working. I'm wondering now, given someone who's watching, like looking for a job and everything, what is it that you kind of looked for before you integrate someone within your system? Because you have some values within your business. So what is that you're looking for in that kind of person? You're like, okay, yeah, I think they're okay.
Key for me, it's always culture, right? I believe every early stage venture takes on the core characteristics of the guys who are there at the beginning, right? So you want to be sure, if I picked this type of personality or this type of culture, what does this mean 5 years down the line? So I don't know whether you've ever had these kind of environments where there's that guy who walks in the room and the whole vibe of the place changes, right? So for me, our culture is founded on a couple of values, and this has been very, 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 very clear from day one. So for instance, we are big on care. And care for us means always think of the next person who is receiving your work as if that was your customer. So your boss is your customer, your colleague is your customer, and even the artisans we work with out there, they're still customers' role. If you think about who is receiving your next piece of work, so a core principle for us becomes care. But second to it for us is collaboration, right? We think we are not big on guys who want to do it alone. So if you're the guy who wants to do stuff by themselves, a lot of those times you're not part of our team. You're gonna have a really hard time working with us because we think of our workplace more like a family, right? So you spend a lot of time.
Well, that's tricky. You know, a lot of employees.
I mean, I want to clarify that so that it's not taken out of context, right? So what I mean, thinking of guys you work with like family is from the perspective of, will these guys be there when I need them, right? Because as an employer again, and a very early stage employer, there's a lot of times you're gonna hit the wall.
Yes.
And you need to be having conversations with guys who are not just thinking of you as if you're an ATM or a place where they get money end of the month. I mean, I've been in situations where it's your colleagues who are becoming a really good support system for you. And I'll give you a good example, for instance, during COVID, right? I remember when the first incident was declared in the country, right?
Yeah, it was around
we had no idea what next. I survived on the support of the guys I was working with.
Now, how did that, because now the question I would even ask is, because you've been able to nurture this, what is it that you think, because you've been able to rely on the people that you have actually employed. Now, that means that the people who you've employed, they feel a sense of like even, that you actually even take care of their needs.
Yep.
So now, how have you been able as an employer, what have you seen that a lot of Kenyan employees don't do right to make employees feel like they're actually welcome and they're part of something that indeed that they want to be a part of?
Yep.
What is it that you see that a lot of employees, even within your circle?
Yes, I think if I were to pick it top of my mind, I've seen this toxic culture, and I've even been part of those kinds of cultures where the boss or the employer is some sort of a god.
Talk.
Right? And everybody else looks inferior to those guys. Right? So the principle for me is always, if you're an employer, in the true sense of that word, you're actually bringing in smarter people than yourself. Right? You're acknowledging that I need somebody who's good in finance because I'm not. I need somebody who is good in HR because I'm not. I need somebody who is really good in marketing because I'm not, right? So employers and bosses in most places have this thing of thinking, I'm the end in it all, right? If I say jump, the only thing I want to hear is how high, right? But the true sense of it should be, see these people as guys who are coming as an extension of yourself. They have competencies, they have skills, they have experiences that you don't. So if I can circle back to that family kind of setting I was talking about, right? It's knowing who is good at what and who is not good at what. So I have this principle that I say, I believe in putting square poles into square holes, round poles into round holes.
Okay, that's key, and I like that what you said that, but sometimes you may put a square hole into a rectangle, and then you may have to fire. Have you ever had to fire someone? I
have. It's the most difficult things for me to date.
Why?
Because my personality type, the kind of person who bets on what people could be, as opposed to what they are now.
Oh, I get
and it's very important for every single employer to know what they are really good at, because I've now seen it's easier for me when sometimes part of these discussions I'm not doing them alone, right? So for me, I'm the guy who sometimes if you show me tears, right? So that completely I get a change of mind, right? But you just need to be able to get to a point where you know things are not working, right? And have this honest conversation. You can call somebody and tell them, hey, it's nothing personal. I believe you're lagging behind on this and this and this. And therefore, this may not be the right workplace for you. It saves you time and saves their time. Because you don't want to be wasting somebody's somebody's time, whereas they could be successful elsewhere, right? So the thing is, by that principles of round poles in round holes, square poles in square holes, what we do at Fundis is that we are sometimes willing to move people long enough before we let you go. But then the key for us is the entrance point.
That's a key thing.
That's the
and I'll
key
jump
thing.
into that real quickly, but take a sip real quickly. And I want to remind guys that, hey, listen, you can also come here and get rid of some of that stress of content creating. And you can collaborate with Twiva. Indeed, they are indeed a company that can actually even help you and your online business, even you as a content creator, to create awesome content for yourself or even for your business. And guess what? You get to meet awesome people like the camera guy over there, but guess what? You can't see him, boo, but you can if you come over to Harlingam, and make sure you actually check them out. They're just right here at Harlingam, so come on by. And as you were saying, when you're actually onboarding people, so that's another thing about now employees now when you're going through that interviewing process. And even as I was mentioning, even now, how do you then, now when you're onboarding someone, are you primarily looking at the like, oh, I've gone to UON, I've done my PhD. Are you looking at all that? Or are you, like when someone's sitting right there and they're in front of you and you're asking them questions, or you have someone asking them questions, Are you looking at the personality? What is it that is usually, what have you seen that you have done? Not what you think, what you have done, based on what you have done, that you have seen that indeed it was this criteria that got this person in the door.
So if I were to tell you what maybe the most successful hires we have had to date, I would narrow it down to something that would say that you're hiring for attitude, but then work for skills. Right?
Explain.
You can't change somebody's attitude. But skills can be grown, skills can be acquired, right? So for us, by virtue of what we do, we are not looking for guys who come to Fundis and feel like they are know-it-alls, right? Because the moment you feel that you are at the top of the mountain, then you stop climbing. So for Fundis, what we really look for is that fit in terms of our culture fit. And that's an attitude thing, right? So most of the guys we have in our leadership now, over the last 3 years, are guys who, some of them were really, like for instance, if I were to pick my chief of operations, who we are very close. She first came in as an intern 3 years ago. But in the entire interviews that we conducted, she was the only person who came back and said, that assignment you guys have given us, I'll be very honest with you, I don't know how to do a 3D render, right? But I'm incredibly good at doing a 2D, and given a chance, I'll be able to learn and do that.
So you see, you don't. So if you don't know, you
just
can
say you don't
know.
Just say I don't, because sometimes people think employers have stuff figured out.
Yeah.
Every one of us is winging it.
Even you guys.
Yeah. If somebody tells you they really know where they're gonna be 5 years from now, I mean, 5 years is such a long time that planning tomorrow is a headache.
Yeah, but then of course you do need to plan.
We plan in the real sense of what we do plan.
But you don't know exactly.
But you're not sure the uncertainty of what could happen tomorrow, the day after. So what we do is you think of worst case scenario and who would I be needing on this team, right? So we hire primarily for attitude. Because skills can be grown. Not that we don't look at skills. There's a bare minimum level of skills we are looking at, right?
Of course.
But we are thinking around, is this somebody trainable? Is this somebody who can grow? Because we believe in investing in the guys we are working with. And this is a conversation we need to have as employers in terms of, a lot of guys are worried around investing in people, because if you invest in people, perhaps they're going to be poached tomorrow.
They're going to leave you.
Yeah. But we told ourselves from day one of the brand reputations we want to have for Fundis is, can I look 5 years down the line and say, you see the CEO in that company? That guy used to work here. You see the other guy in that company? That guy used to work here. I'll tell you, in fact, I had just really 2 good experiences just last week. Guys who I took in as interns, right? So one reached out to me, told me, hey, I've just been accepted in Safaricom.
Oh, nice.
I'm like, we've not spoken for, let's say, an year plus. But why do they find it necessary to reach out to me and let me know, by the way, thank you for that opportunity you guys gave me, right? So what I've seen is your best product sometimes is your people.
That's true. And the key thing even I've seen is that what you're saying is you're nurturing people for them to become the best versions even of themselves through the skill sets that they actually even offer you. And that's something unique that most people, I don't know why many employers don't actually even have this, because there's also this tendency, maybe even you can even speak to this. When it comes to even like, a lot of employees have this headache of like, yes, I've come here and I've done so much. I've offered so much. My skills, here I am, I'm doing it. Then I see someone who is less skilled and even coming less time, and they're my management. How have you now, and you've seen that, have you had these discussions amongst even fellow employers, and this discussion, have you seen this happen a lot?
I mean, it's no secret. This is a very common practice.
Of course.
Right? But underlying every one of those places, there's a culture issue. We can study successful cultures, and we can tell you with certainty, we know what companies they are, we know what they do, and we know what makes our workplace different from any others. I mean, that's why we always vote for, best workplace and those kinds of stuff, right? But at the bottom of it is the guys who are at managerial levels, if you ask me, those would be the guys with the real issue, right? Because there's this culture at Fundis we try to push that no matter who signs your paycheck, always look at it that you're in self-employment.
But then how are they able to internalize that when they don't feel that they are like welcomed, even a part and a parcel of the
It's
whole
a
thing?
culture thing. That's why we're not talking of the culture thing, because I mean, there's the saying that the fish rots from the head.
Yeah.
Right? So if that culture has not permitted from top going to everybody else coming in, right?
Yeah.
Where am I expecting guys to go an extra mile and I'm the guy who clocks in last and leaves fast? Everybody is watching, right? People learn more by what you say. I mean, by what you do, but than what you say.
Even kids.
So that's the entire same thing at the workplace, right? So the culture there would be, do people here know what it takes to be rewarded?
Now, something even interesting I would like to know. How do you, knowing even about, you see management, you're mentioning about management. How do you know management is doing a good job now in this way? Because when it comes to even appraisals and reviews, some concept even I maybe just want to know if what you think about it is, wouldn't you want to interview or even have a discussion with the person under that management to actually know who they are when you are not in the room? Because there's some of you guys out here, what happens is the moment the moment you walk in the room, all of a sudden,
It changes.
people sit up, people cross their legs, people are now straight. So even you can tell.
Yeah. I mean, you walk into a room and the entire vibe that was going changes, right? So you know the person who came in is the one who has caused that change.
Yeah.
And that's where, again, culture goes into. Because I'm thinking of it this way. Is it possible, and for me, that's why I even have issues with all these workplaces where top management sometimes have their corner, their corner offices. I mean, there are guys who you can never access. I have a thing for shared workspaces from day one because I love workplaces where you walk in and you can't tell who is the CEO or who is the boss, right? So that kind of culture also means, is it possible for me to go and hang out with my boss, right? And it tells you a lot where you see cultures where whether we are going for biking or we are going for a soccer game or wherever we're going for, and we are going with guys we work with, right? And people are not conscious of all these titles. And it's an incredibly hard thing to do. But those are the work cultures where management is done by tasks, by objectives. It's not by titles. It's not a pecking order who pecks who, then who pecks who else. I mean, it's not a pecking order. It's, do I know what I'm supposed to be doing? Do I know what I'm being measured for? Do I know what success looks like? Yeah. So I think KPIs are really, really, really key because, again, like
Key
now
performance index.
The indicators and that helps both you as a manager and the person you're working with to know what does success look like. If I'm successful in this role, right? How do we know? In fact, that's where now, if we were thinking of rewarding guys who go the extra mile, how do you know who is going the extra mile?
Yes. How do you now find out?
So that kind of culture is where people know we have, I mean, there's a book I love, The Leader with No Title, right? And that's where we need to move into, right? I've always been tempted to write my business card as the chief fundi, right? Because titles sometimes are deceiving, right? Because sometimes even the role of what I'm supposed to be doing can be lost in the title, right? Because somebody is the chief. I mean, I've seen cards where somebody is saying is the chief everything officer, those kinds of stuff. CEO. I mean, and it's a cool thing to have those titles in your cards.
It's a prideful thing.
But then the thing is, end of day, if you have key performance indicators kinds of system, right? We know we hire you, and we know when you're successful, the outcome should look A, B, C, D. And it's even easier for everybody else to know, right? What am I doing? What Simon's doing? What somebody else doing?
So everybody is able to actually
Yeah, let me give you a good example that I love using. So imagine if you walked in a construction site. So you met the painter doing their work. You ask them, what are you doing? And they tell you, I'm painting. You go to the kitchen, you find a carpenter there doing fittings. You ask them, what are you doing? And they say, I'm doing fittings, right? You talk to a mason, they say all they're doing is walling, right? There's a fundamental problem in that equation because, right, a better answer would be we are building a hospital. We are building a church, right?
We are contributing.
Everybody knows what we are doing and what my part in that role is and what everybody else is doing. Unless you have that kind of system, it's very hard to even hire, fire, promote. And that's why all this bickering and politics, you hear them in the workplace because so-and-so knows so-and-so. So even if something happened, so-and-so will just talk to so-and-so and the whole thing is gone.
Yeah.
So those are the kind of thinking through what kind of culture do you want. Because I think over time, your technology will be copied, your key competencies will be copied. The one thing that people cannot copy and duplicate is your culture.
Even your colors will be copied.
That we have experienced,
yes,
right?
Exactly, so, because I remember.
But your culture, people can even poach your people.
That's true.
But they cannot take the culture with them.
And a key thing, even as we wrap up the conversation, I want to ask you this is, what is one thing that you think, even as an employer, that employees don't understand about you?
Just for me or every other single employee?
Even generally, like even as employers, what do you think that employees don't understand that you guys go through? What is the use sometimes that you feel like employees don't understand?
I call it, and I'll also use a personal example. So the last place where I worked, the last salary I was paid, they paid me with a tablet. There was no money.
Wait, whoa, pause.
Yeah.
Pause. Hold up.
Yeah.
They said like tablet chica.
We don't have money. The tablet you have been using, that's your... And I remember my boss, Tony, who we are still very close with today, told me, Alex, one day you will understand the dilemma of an employer. And I didn't know what he meant that time because I thought he has money, he's refusing to pay us, right? Until now when I got into running my own joint.
Okay.
And sometimes people think you're doing well, you have the money, and you have no idea where the next meal is coming from, right? I'll tell you what, I've been taken by guys to court, and it's not that you're refusing to pay them. You don't have transport home. You don't have a way of knowing what am I going to eat.
And yet you have to take care of the salaries.
So that what I call the dilemma of an employer, it's underrated. And that's why even for our culture, we potentially look for things that people are leaving out on their CVs. So we want to know if you have run a side hustle, right? You have run your own small business here and there. Things that normally don't end up in that resume, those are things we are very interested in. Have you helped support a family business, those kinds of stuff? Because we now know these are guys who have a growth mindset, right? So I remember even when I was working in the law firm, we used to have these things guys were calling unlawful terminations, right? You get fired, you go to court, right? And sometimes people just need to cut their losses and move on, right? You are pushing, somebody has not been performing, they want to be compensated, they don't want to be let go, right? So for me, the dilemma of an employer is a thing. And talk to any person who has in the employment more than 5 guys. In most cases, you don't have stuff figured out, right? You're thinking about rent, you're thinking about salaries, you're thinking about the next quarter, you're thinking about long term, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, sometimes I say the worst thing sometimes employers can do is asking a raise at the worst possible time, right? So you've just had a bad quote and somebody is walking in asking for a raise, right? So I think for me, that dilemma of an employer, sometimes for me, it's something you want to work with guys who understand. So that's why, like for Fundis, from day one, we have always been very keen on, equity share options, right? From day one, you're thinking around, how can we have the first 100 to 500 guys as part of the ownership, right? Because suddenly you have guys who are working to work, not because I work for a boss,
but because
we are doing this together, right? So how many employers can you be able to talk to your guys and tell them, hey, we're not going to be able to pay salaries the next 3-4 months, right? But if you stay, this is what it will look like for you in the next 10 months.
That's the tricky scenario to be in, even as an employer.
Yes.
And if you out there can relate with him in his story, make sure you follow Alex Liwali. Make sure you follow him. Especially, you're very active on LinkedIn, by the way.
LinkedIn, and it's something I'm learning. Right now, I'm using LinkedIn the exact same way I would be using Facebook.
Exactly, and that's what you should be doing because it's even a platform that even you can find even people to even engage with. Even that's how even we constantly even engage with one another.
Yes.
You can actually even find even a future employer through LinkedIn.
Yep.
So create content out there, and in a platform, a place that you can actually come and create content is right here at Tuba Studios. They're at Harlingen, where even I am actually creating content on this podcast, which you have actually subscribed to. I hope so, and make sure you come on down to Harlingen, where you can actually create content like this for your business or even your own personal brand. Come on down to Harlingen. Make sure you do that. All right. So while you're still here watching, see you talk apa. All right. See you guys. Bye bye. Thank you so much for the conversation.